So I am thrilled that you all are here. Your presentation was absolutely amazing. It was interesting. For me, it was inspirational. I was able to learn so much, as I'm sure our audience did as well. So here you are. You have this global following. People from all over the world are getting in touch with hashtag Browngirls, the Browngirl Movement. So that should be exciting. In addition, I know that you've been on the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation. You've been on loads of debate shows trying to explain yourselves and doing a phenomenal job. You've been on radio shows. I've had the opportunity to read through your website, and it's absolutely phenomenal. So you mentioned that this is your first trip to the United States. I know you're trying to take your movement to another level. What does this moment in time mean to the Browngirl Movement?
I think for us it means growth. Like we were saying before, we just feel so inspired. The energy at NJCU and some of the environments that we've been in has just been phenomenal. And you know, we really want to take the Browngirl Movement into places and back into our community to help, you know, a lot of the people, like young people who are growing up and they're struggling with the things that we struggle with. But for us, I think it means growth.
Definitely, I agree with Amina. And I think as she mentioned before, the experiences we've had, we were at a leadership conference at NJCU, and we also went to another event celebrating Women's History Month, where women of colour had monologues, and everything was so relatable. And we didn't expect that. I mean, we were invited here, and we came with an open mind and an open heart, but just the kind of things we've experienced fit perfectly with what we're trying to do. And from that, like Amina said, taking it offline is something that was a seed in our brains of like, can we do it, can we do it, should we do it, should we do it? Just the experiences we've had of people, they're so proud of their culture, they're so passionate about it, you know, whether that's from African, American heritage, etc. Like, it's just the same story, but in a different context. So definitely taking it into schools or colleges and doing workshops with young South Asian women is something we'd love to do next. And this moment in time has really inspired us to do that.
Awesome, awesome. So yes, there's so many different stories and so many different themes and messages as it relates to identity and heritage and culture. And I feel like it's really important. However, even in 2016, and maybe some of our audience members have heard some of this rhetoric, but there's this notion that once you sort of take pride in your heritage, and once you embrace who you are, and once you connect with people who look like you and who are like-minded, is this notion that you are segregating yourself, and we should be celebrating the human race. And as opposed to really focusing so much on our unique identities. And I'm just wondering if you'd be able to talk to that, because, you know, being here in Jersey City, we're in one of the most diverse communities really in the nation. But even within this context, this is what we're hearing. So I want you to be able to, want to know if you could talk more to that segregation piece.
Definitely it's something that we've come across before. I mean, the first moment I mentioned to people about that we want to do this, it was like, oh, you're encouraging segregation, you know. Yes, the human race is one, everyone is equal, but we all have different struggles, we all have different experiences, and that should be acknowledged too, and there's value in that acknowledgement. I mean, just when you mentioned that, something clicked in my head. From my own Sikh background, and my own religion, we believe that everyone is, the whole human race is one and everyone is equal. But the stories and history of the Sikh religion and the gurus, they fought for Hindus to have freedom of religion and for Sikhs to have freedom of religion. So even though we believed everyone was equal, they acknowledged that everyone has their own rights, everyone has their own struggles, and that should be stood up for as well.
I think we've had this a lot actually, and sometimes I'm just like, oh my god. I think it's really important not only what Cecil said, but also to understand that as people of color, we you know, naturally you want to community that understands you. And we're not saying just be with those people. You know, of course, you know, we have friends from many backgrounds, different colors, different religions, and even the idea of one human race. Humans have always existed in communities, be that tribal, cultural, religious. This idea of one human race, we really don't agree with it. And it's about acknowledging that, you know, people are different, they have different struggles. You can't completely understand somebody else's struggle, which may be tied to their cultural or religious background. It's that acknowledgement that is so important. And I feel when people say we're one human race, you're just missing that. And it's not really fair.
I don't think it's good either. Thank you for that. It was interesting to read a post from two brothers who are artists, and they do a lot of spoken word, and I thought that was really neat. So, newsflash, I'm the director of a Women's Center, and even in 2016, people are still trying to figure out why we have a Women's Center, why are we so focused on women, and certainly we understand that the reality is women continue to be marginalized, and we must empower women. However, I see your inclusion of men in your website, not just those artists, but in addition, Omar, Amla's husband, who highlighted a piece from their 3-month studying in Mauritania. And that was a phenomenal piece. So I see that it seems like you're intentional about including men, because sometimes there's this notion of, oh, well, if you're talking about empowering women, then do you dislike men? Are men not a part of the conversation? Where do men fit in? So do you think you could talk a little bit about that?
Yes, definitely. Men are so important in both of our lives. We're both married women, and our husbands are so supportive. I honestly believe that, well, I can say I'm definitely a feminist, and women's issues are not just women's issues. Most of the time, women's issues are also men's issues. It's just sometimes the terminology of saying this is a women's issue, this is a women's issue, it's like men are excluded in the conversation, when actually, if we included men in the conversation, half of the problems would be solved anyway. So, I think it's important to include men in the conversation because it's the issues we discuss are relevant to both genders.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I feel like, you know, some men are also feminists, and the feminist movement is not all about bashing men. You know, we support male artists. We feature a lot of male, we feature a lot of male artists. Like recently, we featured Salvin, who's doing a really cool exhibition out in LA, and you know, it's an inclusive website. It's not just about women. Yes, we are women and we talk a lot about some of our anxieties and concerns, but men are also a big part of the picture too, so we don't like to leave that out.
Great, thank you. And one last question before we head to the audience. So it has to do again with, clearly we're talking about identity and representation and things of that nature, and I'm thinking about the workplace, and I'm thinking about the importance of bringing who you are into the workplace, wherever that workplace is, be it corporate or higher education, entrepreneurship, and I know that there's been research that's been done as it related to the importance of having lots of different people in certain spaces in order to enhance progress and productivity and things of that nature. So just wondering if you'd be able to talk a bit about that.
Definitely. I honestly believe a company is only as strong as its employees. So similarly within a team, you have to work to everyone's strengths and build on, and work with people's weaknesses as well. So in terms of the business sense and within a company, you have to understand your employees in order to get the most out of them. And that's where diversity comes in. If you understand where the cultural nuances of the members of your team and your employees, and you understand their ethnic and cultural heritage and background, you can get the most out of them in terms of the whole company and your idea as a whole. So that's why diversity is so important, because if you just dismiss that and just paint everyone with the same brush, you're not really going to get the most out of them, and they're not going to have a satisfying experience in your company, right? So it's really great that more and more companies are taking this on and realizing this issue and really looking at how to understand their employees better and work with them in a more productive and in a better way.
Can you talk about, kind of like a little two-part, can you talk a little bit about some of the things that you've seen as far as your culture being appropriated? What are your thoughts about it as far as how it can be either detrimental to your movement, or is it something like, oh, well, you know, these people are talking about us in a broader perspective? Like, what are your thoughts in general about that whole aspect?
Thanks, Jeff. Cultural appropriation, yeah, it's a hot topic, especially on Tumblr. People get really, really heated up about it. So yeah, we're quite familiar with it. In my own personal experience, I think one of the major things I'm trying to understand is how yoga has blown up. Like, it's everywhere. Wow! It's going on, we get like hot yoga, Bikram yoga, this yoga, that yoga. I don't even know what's going on right now. It's just amazing. Like, it is a positive thing, I believe. I don't like to put a negative spin on it. But I've been to a few yoga classes myself, and I did study Sanskrit for 3 years at university, so I have a little bit of that in me. So when they're mispronouncing postures and things, I'm like, okay. I think what I'm trying to say is that it's a positive thing as long as you acknowledge where it comes from and what position you play in relation to that. So I've met yoga teachers, and the ones that acknowledge, okay, where their position is in relation to that, so they're like, okay, I don't know everything. They're just like, I studied as much as I studied, and I know as much as I know, and I'm sharing that with you in a humble sense. They're humble about it. And they don't know everything. The only problem is when people start saying, I know this, I know that, and they start repeating their culture back to you. That's when I get a bit uncomfortable. So I think the main thing is, when it comes to cultural appropriation, is to understand your position in relation to it and respect it, ultimately. Respect that you don't know the full story.
Cultural appropriation. Oh my gosh. Yeah, like Cecil said, people get really riled up about it on the internet. You get like the cultural appropriation police literally on your back posting if you put a picture up with if you're non-Desi or non-South Asian and you're wearing a bindi. Honestly, I understand where it comes from, and it can be very offensive. Personally, I think it's always a bit weird when you see somebody who is not South Asian and is wearing a bindi, because when they wear it, it's very trendy and it's acceptable. But for all of the people who are brown and we've been wearing bindis and we've been through things like, you know, racial abuse or people saying, oh my God, you're just fresh off the boat, look at you with your bindi. In that sense, it's not fair. And it's all about acknowledging that certain cultures have sensitivities, certain items and certain symbols have a cultural history that means something to people. And if you're just like ripping the bindi and you're putting it on your head and you don't really know what it represents or how it can be sensitive to people, then I don't think that that's okay. You see it a lot now, you know, if you go into Topshop or Urban Outfitters, people are wearing these big Ganesh t-shirts, and do you even know like what Ganesh is and what he means to the Hindu community? Or it's just, it's difficult, and when you acknowledge that you don't know, that is honestly the most respectful thing to do. At university, there were so many people who were like, I've been to India for a week and I've lived with the local people and I know the Indian world. I was like, oh my God, 1 week? You're not even like 10 days, like 27? You know, it's a real thing, and to be in that environment was just like, oh my God, this is really happening right now. You have to be respectful when you're talking about different cultures, and I think that's the bottom line. Yeah. Yeah.
Regarding the last statement you made, are you planning in the future to educate, not in the whole scope, but little bit like what days and why we do days rather than shut them off, make them educated about the purpose
Are we planning on?
Yeah,
Oh,
in
no.
future, not just now, but
Yeah.
maybe down the road, maybe 10 years.
Yeah, of course, we'd love to do that. I mean, as we said, doing workshops with young South Asian women and young girls, it's about letting them understand they don't have to be ashamed of their culture and who they are. They can be proud of it. And obviously, with the family context, they might not always get that communication. So if we come in from outside as maybe more relatable girls to them, and we can say, we can work with them and figure out what their own problems are as well. I think it's definitely important. And it's more about maybe not telling them what their culture means directly and feeding it to them. It's about them figuring it out for themselves and creating their own version of it that makes sense to them.
Thank you so much. Since a lot of South Asian artists are kind of underrepresented in a lot of the art communities, also a lot of journalists are having hard times publishing their material or writing about a lot of people kind of suspect material now for this internet. How did you guys plug into a community to market people and market yourselves and build your website?
That's a really, really good point. My husband actually recently wrote a piece on how it's so difficult to be a journalist nowadays and get something published, and people are always kind of stealing your idea, or they want to part of the byline. What was the question? How did we kind of get our voice out there? I think we were already on social media, so we kind of knew, these are the people who really inspire us, and we kind of already had a little bit of a network. In terms of building that network, it's all about finding what's unique about yourself and what you want to put out there and just putting it out there. Connecting with people, supporting people, and they'll support you. We found that a lot, within the Browngirl Movement. If you support someone, they're always going to support you. There's not really that competitive, fierce vibe that exists within our community at the moment. It's all about networking as well, actually, go to cool events and going to meeting the right people, and you can get your word out that way as well.
I think it's amazing in this day and age that we have the power of social media and online platforms. We don't have, as I said in the talk, we don't have to wait to get published. We can publish ourselves. Just so many, recently, as I said, month on month we see these online magazines popping up where girls are self-publishing. Maybe they write for Huffington Post, blogs and things like that, but they're starting their own initiatives and their own online magazines as well. There's Browngirl magazine, one's coming out in London called Ben Rugby. So they're South Asian writers, and they're calling out for them. They're saying, give us content, for our magazine. And so in that way, as I said, you can just get directly to the source. You don't have to wait for the Guardian and the Independent. Just forget about them. you can work towards that. But in the meantime, you can really build up your portfolio online yourself. Start your own blog, and just keep putting stuff out there. Keep engaging with the online community. It's really, really powerful.
Hi, I really, really enjoyed all this talk, and I was so amazed to see how you had assimilation, appropriation, negotiating identities, all these complex topics in just a few minutes. It was so clear and so wonderful to hear it. My question is, most of the time, I feel, at least for me, the struggle, when negotiating your identity, was also with our own communities, within our own families. Did you, being a Muslim woman and you being a Sikh woman, did you feel you had to have another whole struggle within your own communities to face that?
That's a really good question, actually. And we've had questions about, how do you be proud of, how do you become proud of your culture, etc. And I think there's not all aspects of our culture that we're proud of. There are aspects that we challenge within our homes and our families as well. If any of you guys know about what's been happening in India over the past few years, women are suffering, and there's a big clash between the empowerment of women and the growing independence of women and the oppression they face within their communities and what they're being faced with and challenged by constantly. And yeah, we do face that, and it's just a constant negotiation, as we say on our website. It's just being proud of your culture takes negotiation, and that's in every sense of the word. So whether it's with our own families and in our own communities, setting an example, challenging things, but I think the most important thing is doing that with respect, you know, and doing it with sensitivity and understanding. The first port of call, I'd say, for people to be proud of their culture and understand is to look at their own family's journey and story, their own family's heritage. When you ask your parents and grandparents what they've been through, you might understand much more where they're coming from, even if they're very, very strict or they have backwards ideals and things. If you ask them about their story and their experiences, you'll figure out, okay, that's probably come from what experience they've had, and your compassion for them grows. So that's what we really encourage when we hope to work with more young South Asian girls, is like, listen to your mothers, listen to your families, and understand their stories first, then you'll understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Sifil said about oftentimes we have to negotiate our place in the home, sometimes also as women. And it's all about being respectful. There's a way, for example, if your parents are telling you something, or to be a certain way, or to follow a certain path, career path, or professional path, etc., and you don't agree with that, it's about being respectful, and understanding where your parents and your family are coming from is so important. We're lucky, we're fortunate that we have families that have always supported the path that we wanted to take, but we totally understand that there are women who struggle a lot, and because we're not coming from that place, perhaps we can't really advise on what to do in that situation, but I know that being respectful, you're not going to lose anything if you're respectful about understanding where people are coming from and why they're saying certain things to you.
I'm very excited to hear your thoughts today, especially being a brown woman and raising a 10-year-old brown girl. I'm really, really thrilled. I have a quick question. I know there is a magazine coming out of New York called Browngirl magazine. Is that connected to your movement?
Yeah, I mean, we came across Browngirl magazine as well, and I think it's saying the same thing, seriously. Even though we're not directly affiliated with them, but as we said, it's part of the wider Browngirl movement as a whole. I mean, it's not our movement at all. We're just a small part of it. I truly think it's just something that's happening by itself, and we're just two brown girls within that. There's a need for it. What we're trying to say is there's a gap. At the moment we have first and second generation immigrant families from South Asia, and they have no way of negotiating who they are. They're just thrown into these schools and things, and then they have such a clash between what their parents and their family and their community is saying, and then what their white friends and everyone else in the other side of the world is kind of saying. And there's this huge gap between them. How do you negotiate that? That's what we're kind of trying to help with and advise on. And Browngirl magazine is doing that too. And as we mentioned about the self-publishing thing, any initiative like that is great to just get more voices out there. And self-representation is so important, and they're doing a great job of that too.
A couple more minutes left. Any other questions or comments? Anything? Oh.
Hi, I was wondering, my name is Todd, and I was wondering, in your short stay in the U.S., have you had a chance to meet or strike a conversation with any brown girls that are maybe not affiliated with NJCU? If so, what were your impressions or what you think?
Hi, Todd. We haven't yet because we've just been like, oh my god, our presentation. So we've been like hibernating a little bit, but as soon as we knew that we were coming out there, we were on Instagram, we were on Twitter, we were on Facebook, we were on our emails, we were like, let's meet up, let's do this, let's go. And so yes, this week we're staying York in Brooklyn, and we're gonna definitely, we've got loads of meetings lined up. We're meeting with Ruby from Joker Journal. She runs her own magazine. It's amazing. We're meeting up with Manjali Sharma. She's an incredible photographer based in New York as well. A couple of others as well. And we're actually presenting at the South Asian Women's Creative Collective on Wednesday and sharing some of our works in progress and our collaborations there in Manhattan. So that's going to be awesome, and there's going to be a lot of brown girls there. So we're looking forward to that. And we also got a call from this awesome girl, Riva. She's called Hybrid Hues. On her website, on her Instagram, check her out as well. She's awesome. So she wants to meet up on the weekend and collaborate too. Like we said, it's a huge network, and we're just all trying to do the same thing. As Amanda said, collaboration is so important. But I think the main thing we want to do is, yes, keep up this collaboration at this level, but we'd love to go back home and get to the grassroots as well. That's our next home.
And you had a lot of brown girls that came out tonight to support you. A lot of brown girls in Portland. So that's a beautiful thing. So if there are no more other questions, comments, anyone else? I don't want to cut anyone off. I just wanted to say thank you all for being here. Thank you. Your presentation was dynamic. You are two dynamic women, and I am thrilled that you not only had the opportunity to present here at NJCU, but I personally got the opportunity to gain two new sisters and friends. So thank you for all that you are doing, and I encourage you to keep touching lives and keep making a difference, because you certainly made a difference in my life. So thank you.